In the last video, you learned how to pass customer information through a Stripe payment intent as metadata. There are many reasons developers may want to do this, but in our case we're doing it to ensure that all orders are entered into our database even in the event of a user error during the checkout process. In this video we'll finalize that code and test it out. In the payment intent succeeded webhook handler, we've already got the payment intent, which has all our customers' information in it. All we need to do is use it to create an order just like we did with the form. The only reason we're doing this is in case the form isn't submitted for some reason, like if the user closes the page on the loading screen. To get started, let's get the payment intent ID, as well as the shopping bag and the user's save info preference from the metadata we added in the last video. I'll also store the billing details, shipping details, and grand total, all of which we'll need in a moment. Now, to ensure the data is in the same form as what we want in our database, I'll replace any empty strings in the shipping details with none, since Stripe will store them as blank strings, which is not the same as the null value we want in the database. Now that the data is clean and ready to go, let's talk about the basic process. Most of the time when a user checks out, everything will go well and the form will be submitted, so the order should already be in our database when we receive this webhook. The first thing then is to check if the order exists already. If it does, we'll just return a response and say everything is all set, and if it doesn't, we'll create it here in the webhook. Let's start by assuming the order doesn't exist. We can do that with a simple variable set to false. Then we'll try to get the order using all the information from the payment intent, and I'm using the iExact lookup field to make it an exact match but case insensitive. If the order is found, we'll set order exists to true and return a 200 HTTP response to Stripe with the message that we've verified the order already exists. If it doesn't exist, let's create it just like we would if the form were submitted. In fact, we can get almost all the code we need from the view that does the same thing. We'll still want to iterate through the bag items. The only difference here is that we're going to load the bag from the JSON version in the payment intent instead of from the session. Also, we don't have a form to save in this webhook to create the order, but we can do it just as easily with order.objects.create using all the data from the payment intent. After all, it came from the form originally anyway. I'll wrap this whole thing in a try block. And if anything goes wrong, I'll just delete the order if it was created and return a 500 server error response to Stripe. This will cause Stripe to automatically try the webhook again later. So this seems like it would work just fine, but there are a couple caveats. What if our view is just slow for some reason and hasn't created the order by the time we get the webhook from Stripe? In that case, perhaps everything is fine in the view and it'll create the order, but it might be a few seconds late. This is not good because our webhook handler won't find the order when it first gets the webhook from Stripe and will create the order itself, resulting in the same order being added to the database twice once the view finally finishes. This is unfortunately one of the downfalls of asynchronous applications, in other words, those where multiple processes are happening at once and some might depend on things we can't control. Fortunately, there is something we can do to handle it, at least to some extent.